What is going on, everybody? It's your boy Gsluke here with a round 2 showdown stream for the RSM Classic, ending a little bit earlier than usual, so we can go live at a reasonable time, right before Thursday night football. So excited for it. Going to break down everything you need to know for Friday, whether it's the weather report, we'll go through some of the ownership, GPP chalk, and what my strategy is going to be for Friday, because I see a massive edge, and I mean a massive edge here for Friday's round. So you'll want to stay tuned for that. And I'm going to be playing a much higher volume for tomorrow than I typically would, and might even go watch it in person. I have free tickets. If I can go ahead, find a hotel, I end up heading up there tomorrow morning for Friday and Saturday. So looking forward to it. Might be there in person, like I said, and let's get this thing rocking. So welcome on in, everybody down there in chat. And if you have any questions throughout the way, do not be afraid at all to go ahead and ask. You can see, I'm up here looking at hotels already. There's a good chance I head up there, but let's head over to the golf course, talk about all the pertinent information, which, we've got a 2-course setup, which we knew going into the week was going to play a huge factor for Showdown over these Thursday and, of course, over the Friday round here. And boy, oh boy, did you have the split today. I mean, I told you yesterday, I thought the golf courses would be at least within earshot distance of each other when it comes to their scoring averages. But I was wrong. It played over a 2-stroke difference. In fact, right around like 2.2 strokes between the two golf courses, which is a lot more than usual. Traditionally, the courses play like about 1.5. And then, so the Plantation played 1.7 strokes under. That was actually a little bit better than we're used to seeing, which is a little bit surprising. And then on Seaside, it played a stroke and a half harder than what you're used to seeing. So you had one course playing easier than expected, one playing harder. It all comes down to the wind. We knew that the wind was going to be nasty today, particularly for the first 3 to 4 hours. And both golf courses early on were playing over par. It's by the afternoon when the wind got down to like 6 to 7 miles an hour of sustained winds, where the Plantation course really started to take off. And if you split it by wave, it's not like the AM or the PM played easier. It's just as soon as the winds ended up dying down, these players nuked it because there's a lot more cloud cover. Sorry to say cloud cover, sorry. A lot more tree cover around the Plantation course. So when you only have like 5 to 6 miles an hour of wind, it's going to have hardly any effect on the golf ball. The only time the ball is going to move is when you're hitting a high shot over the tree line, or on one of the few exposed holes around Plantation. So it played a lot easier. It's also got a few more par 5s, where you can see hole number 8 played nearly 2/3 of a stroke under par. A bunch of holes in the back 9, like the par 5 14th, the par 5 18th, played significantly under par. And even this drivable par 4 15th, which they're playing at closer to like 310 yards today. You can see they have it at 365 there, but in reality, it's playing closer to 310 yards. It's just set up for eagles. And I told you, right, there's going to be a ton of eagle looks around this golf course. Even hole number 10, it's 327. It's playing that true distance today, so actually a little bit longer than hole number 15. But if you're a bomber, particularly somebody, if maybe it's downwind tomorrow rather than into the wind, you might see a few eagle looks, or at least more than one, right? Hayden Buckley, or was it? It was one of those bombers like Hayden Buckley. It might have been, I don't know, don't quote me on it. One guy ended up making an eagle there today. I'm not sure if it was a hole out or if it was a putt, but you're going to see potentially even more looks tomorrow if it's downwind. Over here on the Seaside, you had one hole playing under par, right, with half a stroke under on the easy par 5 15th. But outside of that, one other par 4, playing a quarter of a stroke under par. It was slim pickings because players were exposed to the wind. They were dealing with, those 10 to 15 mile an hour winds the entire day. And when it calmed down in the afternoon, it was a little bit, it seemed, at least we can't really confirm this, because if you go over here to the wind finder, there's no way to distinguish, right, between the coastline and then where the Plantation course is. There's only one weather station out there in St. Simon's Island, particularly close to where the golf course is. There's no way to tell if the winds were actually higher at the Seaside course, but from TV, from the eye test, that's what it looked like to me. It looked like it was a little bit more windy towards the coast, which you'd expect, right? When you go to the beach, it's a lot more windy than it would be elsewhere. A lot of that is because of how exposed the golf course is, right? There's no trees to stop the wind, to create turbulence, that sort of thing, which will slow down that flow. I'm starting to use engineering terms. I got to stop with that stuff. It's a little bit too technical, right? I don't have to get into that, but anyways, it looks like it was more windy out there. So that might've been part of it. Either day. For day 2, we have a similar forecast. So they were calling for, pretty nasty stuff in the morning today. That's what we saw. Tomorrow, a little bit less severe, but definitely higher winds in the morning than the afternoon. So I think conditions are going to get easier and easier as the day goes on. We're also going to get the same warming effect that we saw today, right? When players were teeing off, it was right around, what was it, like 50 degrees today, went up to 54. It's going to start even colder tomorrow. So, that effect where the ball doesn't go as far, there's a little bit more dew on the ground when it's cooler outside, might throw off a few of the players going off early. Whereas if you're targeting guys that are starting at like 10:30 or maybe even closer to 11 a.m. when the last players are teeing off, you're going to escape those sort of conditions. So, for Showdown, when we're trying to make tiebreakers, that sort of thing, you might want to consider the players that are playing later on. But let's get into the edge now. So I'm going to bring up the player pool here. I mean, it's probably pretty obvious from the 2-shot split there. We're playing only guys from the Plantation course. It's not even a thought. If there's going to be a 2-stroke difference between the waves, count me in. Especially when you can target guys that are going off a little bit later on. Really try and specialize and find the players that are in the perfect conditions. It's just something that I can't avoid. So that's the cat's out of the bag. We know what we're going with here. Every single player that I'm taking is going to be in on the Plantation course. That shouldn't be a surprise, even with the conditions that we're expecting. Like I said, it should be a little bit easier on both golf courses tomorrow. But when you have potentially 3 drivable par 4s, the 4 par 5s over there on Plantation, make 1 eagle. That's going to make up for at least 1 extra birdie over one of your opponents, let alone the top end upside if you improve on your opponent's score and then have eagles out there. So just the eagle opportunity is huge for Showdown. If you've ever played Showdown before, you know how big that extra 2.5 point bonus is for making an eagle as opposed to 2 birdies. And sure, the 2 birdies helps you out with streaks, but you're hoping that eagle was a part of a streak too, right? So that's why I said you have even more upside, but just from a vacuum, right? You want those eagles. So I'm avoiding Seamus Power. I guess I'll start with the fade up top. He's nearly 30% owned. I just think that's a little bit too bullish on him there. He had a great round today. I expected it. He's a solid wind player, but he's also not the longest player off the tee. So around Plantation, a lot of those eagle opportunities are dependent on your off the tee play. And if there's one category that Seamus can be a little bit shaky on, it is that driver. So I'm not as bullish as the rest of the field. I think I'm going to end up fading him at 29%. But, this Hoagie, Day, Montgomery range, I'm going to have a lot of exposure there. They're playing on the Plantation course. A few of them didn't have the best rounds like a Hoagie and Day. Even Montgomery's -1 round, you'd say that's probably a little bit disappointing there. But they're only 14, 15, 16% owned. They're easy to get leverage to, right? Play them in like 30, maybe 35% of your lineups. And they're going to have a 2-stroke advantage over guys like a Brian Harman, over guys like a Keith Mitchell. And they're actually coming in higher owned. You can see I have Mitchell at 21%, nearly 22. Brian Hartman at right around 21% owned. They're higher owned than the guys that are getting a 2-shot advantage, right? It's like there's a spread going on, right? Everyone that you're taking on the Plantation course gets a 2-point spread, right? Now go out there and evaluate your plays. That's how you have to think about it, right? And I know it might not be as big an edge tomorrow because the weather isn't as shitty over there on the Seaside course, but it's going to be a 1, maybe 1.5 stroke advantage at the very least. It's something that you're going to want to go ahead and lock in, especially if you're playing 150 lineups. Even if you're playing just 20 lineups, that sort of thing, it's going to make a massive difference in your day. In fact, I think if you just stack that wave, or I shouldn't really say the wave, right? The course, you're just going to probably win money tomorrow because you're going to have a lot of slapdicks out there that just decide to play guys at Seaside and try to get cute, right? I mean, if we look at the scoreboard, I understand the argument. So if we sort it by score, Hostler played on Seaside, he shot 6 under. Turan played on Seaside, he shot 6 under par. Putnam shot 5 under par on Seaside today. Chris Gotterup was able to do that too. But outside of that, every other player in the top 16, right? So we talked about, 4 players there. 12 of them played on Plantation. So 75% of guys that I would say would be optimal, right? That finished T6 or better, right? In the top 6 were on the Plantation course. And then you have to also consider that, the rest of the field, if you look at the bottom of the board, this is even more comical. Of the bottom, let's see, 10 finishers, okay? Only 1 of them played on the Plantation course. 1 of the bottom 10 finishers. 9 of them played on the Seaside course. I mean, it kind of just writes itself, right? We have to target that wave. And when these guys are going to be like 16, 15% owned, I mean, I have to get to them. Now, in higher stakes contests, I'm going to go ahead and preface this. These are ownership projections for the large field GPP, right? The $10, $15, where they're putting like 10, 20K to first, not for higher stakes contests. In contests where you're dealing with a higher entry fee, players that are a little bit sharper, are typically in those contests. These guys are going to be higher owned. They're probably going to be higher owned than a Harmon and a Mitchell, right? So you might see a little bit of a reversal there, particularly on this kind of slate. I mean, usually the sharp plays get steamed up in those kind of contests, but when you have a weather advantage, that's going to be even more so the case. That's something that I've noticed as a higher stakes player that's playing, the $100, $200 single entries, potentially sometimes the 222. I do that from time to time. Sometimes the good old 1250 contest too. We get into the super high stakes, usually when we're around like the Players Championship. Not doing that during swing season. You have to be a maniac to be doing that right now, unless you just have an unlimited bankroll. Then go for it. For Bill Gates, go ahead and play whatever stakes you want. I'm not in that position. But yeah, these guys are going to be higher owned in all of those sort of contests. The guys that know what they're doing, right, that can afford to bet that sort of money are going to know the play of the guys on Plantation. Just keep that in mind. They're going to be maybe twice as owned in those sort of contests. But in the large field GPP, right, they're going to be huge leverage spots. And just because they're higher owned in single entries, just doesn't mean you have to fade them, right? Just pick the guys that you think are actually going to go out there and have a good day. Like Tom Hoagie tears up the Seaside course. A guy that I'd be comfortable getting to in like a single entry tomorrow, where I'm putting a little bit more money behind my stand there. What's going on, Wilson Dog? He said, did you like Cole Hammer's round today? It was his best round yet on the tour. What a round of golf today for Cole Hammer. I have to agree. Yeah, I didn't play him this week. A few other people in the industry were on him. So hats off to them. I have to say, I thought it was a little bit early to be on good old Cole Hammer, but boy, oh boy, he looked damn good today. With that being said, he's been extremely volatile. I mean, he's had a few solid rounds, particularly at the Houston Open, right? Had that one nuclear round that got him into the weekend. He's got to keep it together. But from what we've heard, I mean, he's a stud. I mean, like the kid has been in PGA Tour events the last 2 years. We've been hearing about the kid for the last 5 to 6 years. I mean, ever since he was in high school. Yeah, I mean, it's his coming out party. And hey, if he goes out there tomorrow and tears it up, I mean, whew, boy, oh boy. And what course was he? He was on the Plantation course, right? Yeah, he was. So he does have to go to Seaside. It'll be a good little gut check for him, right? Get him on the harder of the two golf courses. It'll still be blowing out there quite a bit with the wind. Yeah, little gut check for Cole Hammer. Gotta love it. Alrighty. Let's get into these 9K options. I mean, the top end of the 9K range, bottom end of the 10K range is self-explanatory. Right, Hoagie, Day, and Montgomery, love all three of them. They had pretty average rounds today. Towards the bottom of the 9K range, it's much of the same. A little bit higher ownership here just because of the price tag. It's easier to fit these guys into lineups, particularly with how soft the pricing is for Showdown. You can take one of those 10K options, probably one or two guys in this range right here and make a lineup. So that's why they're getting a little bit more steam, right? It's harder to take two 10K guys in a lineup, right? So that's why naturally in Showdown, this range right here gets a little bit more steam than you might expect. Denny McCarthy was unbelievable today, shot 4 under par. I love my outright ticket on him. I love the fact that he got off to a hot start. Yeah, just I can't say enough good things about him. He's a perfect course fit. He talked about how comfortable he is with his ball striking today. And I saw that at the Houston Open, right? That was our reasoning for playing him this week. And he went out there today and the putter came a little bit closer to his baseline. Now, he wasn't lights out today. He missed plenty of makeable putts. So he still has room to improve, which is the scary part. And I think he's trending in the right direction. So if we get a ceiling round with the putter from Denny, which he seemingly used to do every single event, combines the ball striking that he's had over the last 8 rounds at this point, heck, it's been quite a bit where he's been out there striping it. Watch out. I mean, Denny McCarthy could have a nuclear round, something like, I mean, around Seaside, I'm not going to make that kind of call. I was going to say he might threaten something like a 60, but he might. Like, he's that sort of player. When he's with the kind of ball striking that he's putting out right now, he could literally post that kind of score. Something like 6, 7 under par, like you saw from a Turan, that kind of thing, would not surprise me in the least, especially with even more benign conditions for Friday. Like Matthew Neesmith, which I can't believe I said, he's quickly becoming one of the players I just love to fade. But he looked solid. He made an eagle today. He only shot even par, so I don't think he's going to be super highly owned. In fact, I have him now about 1.5% lower owned than a Denny McCarthy for 4-round stuff. Neesmith was quite a bit higher owned than a Denny McCarthy. So I like him. Mackenzie Hughes shot 1 over par, so he's actually a lot lower owned than he was in 4-round contests. I love him there at $9,000. I think you can play him at 25-30% of your lineups. He tore up the Seaside course last year, so kind of like a Tom Hoagie. Some of the other guys that have success here just completely tear it up when it comes to the Plantation course, right? And then kind of just survive at the Seaside over the weekend, shoot like 1 to 2 under par. Tom Hoagie and Mackenzie Hughes take the Seaside to like 3-4 under par. Or last year with Mackenzie Hughes, he finished, I believe it was 4 under par over his last 6 holes, and nearly ended up taking the tournament from Taylor Gooch. So it's he clearly likes the course. I think that he's got a bounce back in him, particularly now that he's getting to the Seaside. Matt Kuchar, he scored decently today, shot even par despite not having his best stuff on approach. He was, I believe, hit every single fairway but one, so he was 13 out of 14 on his fairways. But his GIR percentage was like 55%. He hit like 10, maybe 11 fairways on the day. Greens. 10 or 11 greens on the day, which you can't do, right? You're going to shoot even par. He got up and down quite a bit today. He made some putts for birdies. But if he's going to go out there and have a ceiling round, he's got to clean it up in that department. So I definitely think it's possible. It's golf. It's Showdown. It's extremely volatile. These guys just have bad days, right? Especially for an old guy like Cooch. Maybe he woke up with a stiff neck. We'll never know, right? We don't have injury reports. They're not held accountable for those sort of actions, so we'll never know. But I'm always willing to get back to players. I mean, especially when it's just one fluke round. If you take a look at his stats over the last 24, or in this case, the last 50 measured rounds, I mean, he's been excellent, right? We talked about it going into the week, gaining 1/3 of a stroke per round on approach. He should get back to it. And if he does, maybe putts like he did today, a ceiling round is coming. I like Putnam, love the putter, love the fact that he played well on Seaside and is now heading to Plantation. Brendan Todd had a bad round, but now he's only 7% owned. So he's going to be completely overlooked, but brings a lot of that putting upside to the table. Kind of like Matt Kuchar, he missed a ton of greens today, just kept himself out of position over and over and over again. He's got to clean that up. But kind of like a Matt Kuchar, again, we talked about this going into the week. Ooh, hit the wrong tab there. Sorry about that. He's gaining significantly on approach, right? A little 0.2 strokes over his last 50, but over his last 16 rounds, it's closer to half a stroke per round. I like his chances to bounce back. Let's see what else we've got here. Over to the next tab. Going into the 7K range, it's much of the same. A lot of the guys I took going into the week that are playing on the Plantation were playing. Wyndham Clark, I guess, would be an exception to that role. I didn't love him going into the week. He shot 1 over par today. Doesn't really surprise me around Seaside, as he's very dependent on his driving distance. He's one of the longer players on tour. When he was playing with Dustin Johnson, he was routinely out driving him. And around Seaside, you just can't leverage that. You're laying up on at least half your tee shots. When you're not laying up, you're usually hitting like a 3-wood, that sort of thing. Just it's a tough scene for a Wyndham Clark. So he's got to have a ceiling round around Seaside with the putter to have anything like a 4 or 5 under round. But at Plantation, it's not the same equation. The fairways are massive. There's not these, marsh areas to worry about. There's not the beach out there that you can hit onto in a few holes. Kiowa Island, you can literally hit onto the beach. And the thing is, the beach at Kiowa Island, I know we're not talking about Kiowa here, is inbounds. Like I saw, and this is funny, I think it was on the broadcast, I can't confirm, because I was there the whole weekend. Shane Lowry hit onto the beach and then had to hit his approach shot from the beach, and he almost made it. He almost hooped it from the beach. And it was just one of the funnier things I've ever seen. Either way, he doesn't have to worry about that at the Plantation course. Wyndham Clark, it just bombs away, has the largest fairways I've ever seen at a golf course before. He can potentially take on all of those drivable par 4s, the par 5s he should eat up. I mean, I love Wyndham Clark for the Plantation course. So, for Showdown, getting him in that sort of advantage, I'm on him. Next up, we got Aaron Rye, Will Gordon. I love Will Gordon. He seems made for that Plantation course, kind of like a Wyndham Clark there. We got Scott Stallings. Scott Stallings let us down on greens today. I took his over on Prize Picks, which is didn't work out for us. Let's say that. I think he hit like 12 greens on the day, so it wasn't atrocious. But also a player that's aggressive, relatively long off the tee, should be able to take advantage of that plantation course. Davis Thompson, if you're looking for a bounce back, is your guy. He was 7 over par at one point, got it back to 5 over, which isn't saying very much. He's definitely going to end up missing the cut, but he's a local guy. He's got a lot of friends and family, I'm sure, that are going to be cheering him on tomorrow. So if you're looking for somebody to stay engaged, despite being, outside the cut line, not going to be over there, not going to be there for the weekend, it's a Davis Thompson, right? He's not going to let up. So I'm willing to play him, particularly because he's only 3.8% owned. Taylor Moore shot over par. Another player who's going way under owned because of that. Playing on the advantageous course, you can count me in. Ben Griffin, he's on Seaside. He's a fade worth talking about. A few other guys here too, right? Like Grayson Sig. I'm fading him because of his ownership. He's 15% owned. Ben Griffin is also on the Seaside course, so that's not helping him out. Not going to be playing a Harris English. He's also on Seaside. I have him at nearly 15%. I'm not going to play Davis Riley. He's also on the non-advantageous course. Now, I hope he has a big weekend, right? I have him for my 4-round stuff, but I'm not going to play a chalky player on the shitty course, right? I guess that's it for most of the fades there, but you get the idea, right? The guys that are going to be highly owned on the Seaside course are going to be automatic fades, guys that I'm just avoiding here. Bottom end of the 7K, a lot of guys I'm looking for with upside. JT Poston, he's not quite as out of it as somebody like a Davis Thompson. I mean, clearly Poston can still make the cut here, so we don't have to worry about motivation. He's a local guy. Should fit the golf course quite well, particularly at Plantation. Trey Mullinax, a bomber. You got to like that, like a Wyndham Clark. Chesson Hadley, a perfect course fit, only 0.6% owned. No one played him for 4-round stuff. So when I checked ownership, I went into the Draftkings app and sorted it by highest owned to lowest owned. The guy I was most surprised about had to be Chesson Hadley. I thought he was going to be like 5 to 7%. Now I projected him for like 2% ownership, but I had a sneaking suspicion that like, oh, this is a Chesson Hadley course. He's going to get that steam, and he never did. So yeah, for tomorrow, I'm also projecting him to be relatively low owned. People just don't like playing him for whatever reason. Luke List historically tears up the Plantation course. If you look at his top 10 finish last year, a lot of that was fueled by his round at the Plantation course. So I like getting to him. He's only 2.2% owned. Sepp Straka, good old Sepp Shanka. I'm just going to keep calling him that to hopefully reverse mush him for the entire weekend. I love myself some Sepp here. He loves, a tight golf course. Plantation isn't so tight off the tee, but he's a high upside player and only 4.1% owned. Dean Burmeister, I don't love him at Seaside, and he shot 4 under par today. So, hats off to him. That's a really good round considering his skill set. But at Plantation, I love him. Like, he's the perfect course fit for Plantation. He's got a very similar skill set where he's like an elite distance guy, also an elite putter, to Wyndham Clark. Him and Wyndham Clark are, I would say, like skill set comps. I think that they're very close in terms of a lot of their characteristics. So if I like him, I'm definitely going to like Burmeister. So even though he's 8.2% owned, which is quite a bit for the bottom of the 7K range, we'll be getting there. Benny Ann, got to like his distance. So I'm getting there as well. Should be able to take advantage of those drivable par 4s, potentially the par 5s. Michael Thompson, another player who had a shitty round, but he's got that local narrative. So those guys that are local, I just don't see them giving up and rolling over. I don't know. Maybe it's just me hoping that they turn it around. I don't see him making the cut or anything like that, but low owned. Yeah, I don't hate it. I think he's worth taking a few shots on. Chris Gotterup, he's on that same MO, right? Like a Wyndham Clark. He's that elite bomber that I think should be able to take advantage of those scoring holes. Streb loves this golf course. He was first round leader the last time he played at the Plantation course. Next up, we've got good old Charlie Hoffman. He's just underrated. I think he should be more expensive. Harry Hall, another bomber. Tyler Duncan can get it out there with his distance from time to time. People always kind of disrespect Duncan. I feel like people call him like a plotter. He's not. He's not really a plotter. If you take a look at his stats, he loses off the tee, but it's not his distance. Where's a good old Tyler Duncan. There you are. Look, he's gaining a third of a stroke per round off the tee. You can't gain a third of a stroke per round off the tee when you're, a short player. That's just, it doesn't happen. So we got to put some respect on his name. He's only 0.6% owned. I like Pan Kazire. He's also a relatively long player playing on Plantation. And Chad Ramey, I believe, is one of the last few players that I'm getting to. High birdie percentage player playing on the plantation course, aggressive player. Brian Stewart, he had a horrible round today. It's one of the few guys that I play, and I'm kind of like glad he had a bad round, right? He's like my least favorite player on tour, but in theory, should tear up this golf course. So I'm playing him again. And maybe that's why I hate him so much, right? Is every time I play him, he sucks. But hey, he's 0.8% owned. Play him in 2 lineups, you get your leverage and you move on. Next up, we've got Peter Malnati. He's 0.6% owned. He is the cheapest player that I'm getting to, I believe. Yes. Cheapest player that I have in my pool as of right now. He's $6,300. Loves himself a Showdown slate. Is one of the higher, more prolific birdie or better makers that we have in this range. Not on tour, right? That would be a little bit of a stretch, but in this range, certainly can get a hot putter. Is excellent at short courses because he does have a little bit of distance issue. So I don't think he's going to be taking advantage of those par fours, right? He's not going to be driving hole number 10 or anything like that, but he should be able to hit a lot of good wedges and could get that hot putter. So kind of like a Stewart. I don't love their off the tee play, but I do think that they're at least in play or at least in consideration when it comes to these large field GPPs. Now that we've gone through my poll, what I want to do is actually sort this by ownership and talk through who the chalk is, right? So we mentioned some of the chalky plays as we went through it. But let's actually just sort this by ownership and figure out who the highest owned guys are. Just kind of like review them. So let's go down here, put it for projected ownership. Largest to smallest. There we go. Alrighty, so we got this sorted by projected ownership, and I just want to go through a few thoughts here, right? So if you have any questions about the player poll, any players you want my takes on, now is the time for it, because after we do this chalk report, we're going to hop into some of the lineup construction, some of the thought process when making GPP lineups. Alrighty, so most of the chalk here, is towards the top of the board. It shouldn't surprise you. There's a few of these 7K guys mixed in there, right? Like a Grayson Sig, like a Harris English. Will Gordon is getting quite a bit of ownership. He came in a lot higher owned than I thought he would for 4-round contest. He came in like 12%, which I had him projected for like 9%. So it wasn't like drastically off, but he came in a little bit more steamed than I was expecting. But like Seamus Power is like the one mega chalk that we have to worry about. I talked about it off the bat. I don't think he's a bad course fit by any means, but I'm not comfortable playing 60% of them when we have guys around him that are right around 15% in that same range, right? Like a Montgomery. We talked about him a bit earlier. A Jason Day, right? He's 14% owned. You could get to him there. Or even a 16% owned Tom Hoagie, right? All of those sort of plays are more than adequate substitutions. And when you're playing a lot of lineups, right? When you're playing like 150, or in my case, I'm probably going to play like 40 lineups for tomorrow in the large field GPP. When I'm playing that sort of volume, I'm going to have to fade somebody that's 30% owned. I'm not comfortable playing somebody in 60% of lineups for a single round sample size. Let's see what we've got going. Wrong tab there. A few other chalky plays. Keith Mitchell, he's playing on Seaside. It's like kind of a no-brainer to fade him. Same thing with Brian Harmon. They're on a course that's 2 shots harder than all of these other dudes. So just, don't even think about it, right? Just fade them. If they end up burning you, it's like a 1 in 8 outcome. I wouldn't feel too bad about it, to be quite frank. One of these guys might end up going off, right? It might be a Brian Harmon. It might be a Davis Riley. It might end up being Harris English for all we know, right? But good luck trying to guess, right? On a course that's 2 shots harder than the other one. So all those sort of players, just automatic fades, right? And you can see the highest owned player that I'm getting to is Denny McCarthy, who had one of the best rounds of the day on the Seaside course, and is arguably my favorite favorite play going into the week, right? So no duh. I might be willing to play 40% of him, but I don't want to play 60% or 50% of a Keith Mitchell here, right? Those just seems like a little bit of a stretch to me. So that's the chalk report. Let's see if we got any questions. Wilson says, are you ready for the Hero World Challenge? Yeah, I honestly, one of these years, I'm going to go to it because it's in the Bahamas. It's literally like an hour flight from where I'm at. If I took a boat ride, it'd only be like 4-hour, little 4-hour boat ride over there. And I have buddies that make the run over to the Bahamas all the time. I don't know. Maybe I'll go there sometime, but I'm looking forward to it. We have Tiger Woods teeing it up, all the top players. It's like just 30 of the best players in the world. So yeah, man, it'll be a lot of fun. I believe that's December 14th the second week into December. You also have the team event. I forget the name of it. It's the one they have over there in Orlando that they do. QBE Shootout, I believe is the name of it. They may have changed it for this year. That'll be fun too. Yeah, I like the December events. They're a little bit more laid back, but they have their attraction to it. The PNC is another one. They have multiple, Chase. That's actually a third event. Tiger's playing in that one too, actually. That's the father-son event. So they have a team event for the PGA Tour players in December. And then they also have that one too. So yeah, it's a lot of fun. That's pretty cool there. And he also asked, Aaron Rai, 13 out of 14 fairways and 15 out of 18 greens, and then still shot +4. Yeah, man. Like imagine that. Your ball striking's that good. That sounds like I used to be in such a putting rut that I would have that kind of stuff happen. What's his price here, right? He's like I'm playing him. There's no chance you putt like that again, right? Like I've had it happen before where it feels like you have one of your best days with your swing and you just cannot make a putt. To shoot +4 and have that kind of day ball striking, I can't imagine how bad it was. Like I've never had a putting day that bad. And Aaron Rai, on Bermuda grass, what is he, like a slight loser on the greens? He's not going to hemorrhage strokes like that every round. Hey, that might make me like him a little bit more there, Chase, to be quite frank with you, because that's not going to happen again. I can tell you that pretty much for sure. Let's go ahead and share our screen here, hop over to Draftkings. And we're going to talk through some of the lineup construction side of things. And then hopefully, is the Prize Picks golf board up? Let's check that. It is not. Okay, great. All right. Well, I'm hoping maybe, the time we take here on the DraftKings side, maybe they'll get that board up. If they do, we can go through the Prize Picks board. I was hoping we could. But either way, I'll talk about some of the averages. So if they don't have the board up, I'm still going to give you guys my notes on today's round from like the averages for greens, the averages for fairways, all that sort of stuff, and how I expect it to play tomorrow. So even if we don't have the actual props, I'll be able to give you my thoughts in general. So let's talk about the GPP stuff first, though, our thought process, lineup construction. When it comes to Showdown, when we have such soft pricing, like I said, this 9K range gets abused. Players are going to take one of the guys in this 10K range. Seamus Power is going to be the most popular play. Mix in one or two of these plays, right? So it might be a Neesmith. It might be a Mackenzie Hughes here. You're going to take two guys in this range, and it might not be two guys right next to each other in the pricing. Maybe you go with a Kuchar instead, right? You get the same idea because you're left with $7,200, and the guys here at the bottom of the 7K range are legitimate names. Let alone if you just go down into the 6K range and take one shot, right? One flyer, which for Showdown it's a pretty easy thing to do, right? Oh, Harry Hall playing on Plantation, long player off the tee. Okay, now you're up to $7,400, and the names up here are comical. I mean, JT Poston shouldn't be $7,300. Let's see, in terms of like your pricing, like guys that are just off. Let's see, like Lauer, right? $7,400. You could add to that sort of lineup. And then at $7,500, you have a Thompson, a Moore, who I like. If you wanted to take a chalky play, you could take a Grayson Sig, right? But he's on the Seaside course. Probably want to avoid that. Just a bunch of guys here that make plenty of sense. It's not hard to build lineups, let alone if you take a real shot at the 6K range. So if you get a little bit frisky, like I like to do for Showdown potentially, like take a Malnati, right? And look what that does. That puts you at $7,700. I mean, it's comically easy to make lineups for these GPPs. So I always challenge people when they're building Showdown lineups to go down into the 6K range. It feels uncomfortable, but when you're dealing with a one-round sample size, I mean, let's sort this by score, right? It really speaks for itself. Ben Griffin, right, was a lower 7K range golfer. Turan was a 6K range golfer. Suh was a 6K range golfer. Hostler was a 6K range golfer. Oh, and by the way, Hammer, who shot 8 under par, was the minimum price this week. And you think it's crazy for us to take like a Malnati for tomorrow? And like I've heard content creators this week, especially like for 4-round stuff, going like, oh, you don't need to go in the 6K range. They're all bums. Well, all the bums played well today, right? And you don't have Cole Hammer in your lineups, then you're probably down first place of the GPP. I can tell you that from experience because of like the top 7 fantasy scores, I have every single one but Cole Hammer. And my best lineup is in 4th place of the GPP currently. So we're up there. We're in contention. I don't like to talk about lineups after one day because it's meaningless, right? That lineup's probably going to be in like 1,000th tomorrow. My lineups that are like in 2,000th place are probably going to be the ones up at the top tomorrow, particularly because of the golf course change. But you get the idea, right? Like you have to take chances down low, particularly if you're going for the large field GPP. So that's why I like getting to these guys so much. That's just, I want to stress that point, because not only does it give you the salary, which is like what everyone likes to talk about when it comes to taking value picks, but it gives you ownership leverage to the field. And these guys are, I don't want to say just as viable as the 7K options, but it's not too far off. It's not drastically off. In terms of the top of the 7K range, I do like myself some Will Gordon, right? And you could flash, round out this sort of lineup with like a Stallings, a Moore, Thompson, like we were talking about a little bit before. Let's move on to the cash lineup. In cash, I think Seamus Power should be a cornerstone of that lineup. Denny McCarthy should also be a cornerstone. If you even play one Seaside guy in your cash lineup, you're a donkey. It's just ridiculous, right? It's a 2-shot advantage. You better have 6 players that are playing on Plantation. In the 8K range, your safest bet is probably an Andrew Putnam, definitely because of his first round on the Plantation course. So you could take him. In this 7K range, I guess it's a Will Gordon. At the bottom of the 7K range, it's, my phone's freaking going off. Okay, there we go. Silenced it. It's probably like a Luke List. He has a great track record around the Plantation course. And then you have 7K remaining. And I mean, there's a bunch of guys you could take here. I mean, I can't go over all of them, right? Or of course, the Draftkings overlords are going to get mad at us. We get the point, right? Just take your favorite options up top. This pricing is soft. You definitely have to have power. I think you should definitely have McCarthy in your cash lineup. You should probably also definitely have Andrew Putnam. So that core 3 right there of like I said, a Power, McCarthy, and Putnam is probably the only 3 that you have to have. Outside of that, where you're left with $7,300, have at it. Play your top 3 guys down low. Alrighty, so we talked about the GPP build, talked about the cash build. Let's see if there's any questions down in chat. See what's going on. Nope, we don't. Alrighty, let's hop into prize picks. So, I don't know, the moment of truth. Are we going to have the prize picks board? We aren't. So let's go over here to the golf course and really talk this through. There's a couple of things that might happen. I think we're going to get strokes in birdie or better props for the Plantation course. Or at least I'm hoping so, right? Because I think the reason they avoided giving us ones for Plantation is because we look at the scoreboard over here for Plantation and click on a hole. It says shot trails are not available, right? So you can't see exactly where the ball lands, right? So when it says shot 2 from the green, that's the only thing we know about, like whether it was a GIR or not, is because it says shot 2 from the green. If they were to chip in from off the green, it's just going to say shot 2 in the hole, right? And it's not going to say shot 2 in the hole from off the green or from the rough or whatever it might be. That's the issue. That's why they're not going to do GIR or fairway props, right? Because even though they do update the stats over here, it's just not a good experience, right? But I'm hoping we get strokes and fairways because I mean, it's the same, right? Like, I mean, the scorecards, right, are the same between the 2 things here. So I'm hoping we're going to get the props for both categories. If we do, I love overs for birdies on the Plantation course. Conditions are going to be even easier. It played 2 strokes under par. And let me bring up the averages. Let me bring up my Discord. I threw them down in my Discord earlier. Here are the averages for today's round. So the GIR average, so greens regulation average for the Seaside course, and this is only going to be for Seaside. They're not going to do Plantation for like GIR or fairways. Your greens and regulation average was 71.4% or 12.85 greens. Your fairway average was 69.7% or 9.7 fairways. So typically you had an average of 13.5 around Seaside. That went down to 12.85. And you typically had right around a 10.5 fairway average. And that went down to 9.7. So clearly, played a little bit more difficult today. In terms of the board, I would expect that to be reflected. I would expect to see a lot of 13 greens regulations, probably even a few 12.5 green regulation props. For fairways, I would expect the average to be at like 10. Maybe 9.5, 9 for some of the lower accuracy players. You're definitely going to see softer pricing is what I would expect. And with that kind of board, it's going to open itself to a lot of overs and unders. I mean, clearly for round 1, right? If you took unders on a lot of fairways, greens, regulation props, you probably had a really good day. So I don't think they're going to price it that same way again. And I think it's going to make it a little bit more fair, a little bit more interesting, right? You're going to be able to look at long-term stats. You're going to be able to look at stats from round one and make a lot of decisions here for the next round. So I think it'll be a really solid round in terms of profit. Let's look at a few other stats. What else do we have? The scoring average, of course, we talked about before, but the Seaside played 0.3 shots over par, nearly 0.4 shots. And the Plantation course, as indicated on the screen here, played 1.78 shots under par. So quite a little bit under par. In terms of your birdie or better averages, at the Seaside course, the average was 2.97 birdies, and the average at the Plantation course was 4.23 birdies. So nearly a 1.3 birdie difference between the two golf courses there. That's notable. Actually, it's actually exactly a 1.26 birdie difference. So that's what I meant by like birdies at the Plantation course. If we can get that category, and I mean, the average was 4.2. We can go after the guys that are aggressive, that are in form, that we expect to go out there and have a good day. And they're going to post 5, 6, maybe even 7 birdies in their round. I feel pretty good about that. So I'm hoping we get that category. That would be what I would focus on out there. But hey, if you are looking for my picks of what we're going to be doing for this slate, they're going to be on the Patreon as per usual. But that is all I've got for this live stream. Like I said, I might end up going to the event tomorrow, so I got to figure that out here. If I do, got to get to bed early and going to be waking up at like 3 a.m. if that's the case. Driving up there, trying to get up there by like 8:30, 9 a.m., that sort of thing. And then I'll have a really good idea of the golf course for tomorrow. So either way, we're going to have a round 3 live stream. It might be from up there in St. Simon's Island. It might be from here as well. Don't know what we're doing yet. It's still up in the air. But like I said, best of luck for tomorrow, guys. And let's get this cash.